In a world where ESG frameworks define sustainability and IKIGAI defines meaning, leaders are asking, can compliance meet consciousness? Right? In this global relevant conversation, we have Vaidyanathan Chanramouli, a purposeful driven servant leader and a responsible AI transformation advisor, to explore the purpose fuels performance and how Ikigai can transform ESG from metric into movement. Growth that forgets purpose multiplies risk. Purpose that ignores growth fades into good intention. Welcome to Power of Knowing Forums weekly podcast series 304 live on uh, LinkedIn today. We have the honor of having Mr. Vaidyanathan Chandramouli, purpose driven servant leader, inspiring Ikigai, resilience and sustainable growth, advisor, VCISO, DPO, NLP, and TA coach joining us today. Let's welcome our esteemed speaker to the podcast event and dive into the topic. Sir, good evening. Welcome to
Uh,
our podcast, sir.
Very good evening, sir. I would like to thank you for inviting me, for this podcast. Looking forward for a purposeful, interactions today.
Thank you, sir. Sir, a small intro about yourself would help the audience about
Right.
your journey. That would help us, sir.
Sure. Very good evening to all the podcast listeners who are viewing live in the various platforms. My name is Vaidyanathan Chanramouli and I go by Vaidi. I have over 3 decades of experience, having seen both the worlds when it came to, being in the era of no internet. That's when I started my career, the good old days of Unix sort of a programming languages, SQL. Those have been my starting point. Being in the IT industry when I started off my career after my engineering. Then if I want to call it a midlife crisis or whatever, I've been in US for a couple of years. Came back to India. Settling outside of India was never my ambition. Way back, came back. Then given a choice at that point in time to manage project management in software delivery or something else, I thought I'll plunge into something new. Considering that I was part of a customer ODC during my Patni computer system days, where compliance was very important element. So that was the point where I moved into GRC, the governance, risk, and compliance roles, having completed my CISA way back in 2005. And since then, I have been playing those roles. Patni has been, where I have learned all of these elements, what I am today. And then I've had a short stint with Mahindra Satyam. And then my longest stint was with Wipro for 10 years, wherein I was managing the business continuity and the entire COVID crisis. Me and my team were program managing. So that's what my background. And 2023, I wanted to run behind my passion to do something on my own. So came out of corporate life, and currently I have my own small consulting firm. So I do advisory, consulting, training in the gamut of cybersecurity, information security, data privacy, resilience is our forte. And then as when I was with the business continuity, that's when I got to hear about ESG, and the ESG bug started on me, and that's where the journey started on ESG. So some of the elements of ESG closely resonate on my personal stuff, and that's where I focus on ESG as well. And I'm also a certified independent director. I can sit on the boards as well. So that is a start, very brief. I've been part of the various industry forums. For those who are not aware, ISACA, US based body, with 55 years been there. What we used to call it as EDP Audit Association and Information System Audit and Control Association. I've been part of that, having certified. I'm the immediate past president. Just this September, I was the president, and I am also part of the Business Continuity Institute. I'm currently handling the Chennai chapter of the Business Continuity Institute.
Great journey,
That's a
sir. I
very
think,
brief about me.
yeah, a lot of experience. And to add to what you are saying, I am an ex-Wipro. I also stayed in Wipro for 14 years. Just to give you a hint on that. I left Wipro during the COVID years. Just to give you. Sir, let's dive into the topic. When when ESG metrics meet IKIGAI principles, what truly changes in leadership decision?
Right. I'll put it this way, ESG metrics meeting the Ikigai principles, right? So if I were to call the ESG, for the benefit of all our listeners, ESG stands for environment, social, and governance, right? While organization by large, for work on the profitability, where they bring value for all the investors, so that the internal stakeholders are benefited, in terms of the profit, and also their from an external standpoint, their customers and others are benefited out of that. But when you talk about ESG, it brings in an element of external accountability, wherein along with these stakeholders, you will also have to look at the other stakeholder in terms of what kind of impact we are going to cause on the environment, and what kind of impact we are going to cause on the societal aspect of it by running this business, right? Are we going to impact the society, where the organization is operating out of, whether positively or negatively, right? So that is what, from an accountability standpoint, there is a larger element of external accountability. And when it comes to ikigai, right, ikigai is a Japanese concept where we bring in a purpose for whatever we do, right? So from that perspective, when the external accountability is linked with a ikigai, which is a purpose, right? You bring in a larger connotation of internal alignment, right? Focusing on individual and the collective purpose, wherein the leadership, do what they want to do, right? That is what. And this kind of transition, right? Managing the risks, not just from a financial standpoint, you are also bringing in the risk pertaining to the environment. Whether are we going to have a positive element there or a negative element. So you bring in that, so that we nurture the overall deeper sense in whatever decisions the organization is making, right? So this kind of a fusion, if I were to call it that way, where we bring in the element of profit along with the principle of planet and people, right? That's what we call it as the triple bottom line, where we bring in the profit and the people and planet standpoint. Here I would like to link it with Mahabharata, where Arjuna balances the duty and the righteousness when during the Kurukshetra war, right? We can see some of these elements in many movies. One such movie, if I were to call it that way, in Tamil movie, there is an Anbesi one, where the compassion towards the people bring in the leadership with ikigai, right? That's what we are talking about, the ikigai. So when an organization embarks ESG with the ikigai principles, the decisions whatever they make, right, the organization make, will contain a lot of empathy. It will be more natural, and then it will be stakeholder centric, right? It will look into all possible stakeholders who are involved, and then it brings in the overall harmony, right? If I were to call it in an Indic way, right, it brings in the elements of dharma and karma together, both of these elements, and that's where your the accountability and the purpose gets mapped with dharma and karma.
Yeah. So, got it, sir. I think what you are saying is you are looking at empathy and direction that is needed for every decision that is made, right? And now coming to which one, how can data-driven governance include emotional needs? Because you said sympathy, right? So, how do we look at that, sir?
Right. So when we are talking about empathy, it also brings that's where we bring in the element of emotional intelligence. Right. When we bring in the emotional intelligence aspects, we humanize the data. We are living in the era of AI, when we look into AI and we get output, and then we use something to humanize those. Right. So it is humanization of data, where we turn the metrics, right, which are basically, if I were to call it that way, with no hard feelings, cold numbers into stories about what the people, the stakeholders, whatever we mean here, we bring in the experiences of all those stakeholders, right? I go back, I'll be using a lot of movies, movies, culture, songs, resonate with me a lot, and that's how we connect with people. I'm going back to the 1980s, a very old Hindi movie, right? Masoom, Shekhar Kapoor's movie, where there is a song by name Tujse Naraz Nahi Zindagi, Hairan Hu Main, right? That's that song. If you really understand the meaning of that song, it reveals the emotions, the hidden truths, and what are all the facts beyond the surface. That's what it brings in, right? So when we have all of these, and when these metrics are taken and then discussed during the board meetings, right? We can also include the sentimental analysis of all the stakeholders, right? So that we bring in the quantitative feedback as part of our governance dashboards, right? So the emotions, actually, with data driven emotions, fosters the empathy, making the decision making, and then it also starts organization culture, and involves a lot of stakeholder trust.
Thank you for that, sir. Now, what happens when purpose becomes a part of quarterly KPIs?
Right. So adding on to what we talked about in the previous question, right? When we talk about the performance metrics, bringing in the empathy. The moment we bring in the empathy, the purpose gets embedded, right? The purpose gets embedded into the various KPI. So and then we bring in two other important elements: values and vision, right? So these are all, we align all of these as part of the value and vision of the organization, and these becomes as important as the numbers what we report as part of our metrics, right? Numbers and targets defined as part of the metrics, right? And then it also aligns the employees and leaders with the mission, so that we have the broader vision, uh, uh, and values. Then we get into the overall element of organization mission, boosting all possible, increasing the overall engagement levels of the employees and all other stakeholders, right? So once we have these, your quarterly reflections, right, the reviews, whatever we may have, at the board meetings, we may have, it will be more of what we call it in FMEA as impact driven, right? So you will have reflections on the impact, not just on the output, but it will also lead into an element of continual improvement. Coming from a management system standard myself, right? You can't be in the same level of baseline. You have to improve, right? It is not a continuous improvement. You are going about more of a continual improvement, where we baseline at some level, keep ourselves steady, and then keep improving on an ongoing basis, right? Again, I'm bringing in a movie here, Three Idiots. If you look at, where the passion for the guides the overall performance, and then KPI just becomes a tool for growth and meaning, right? So that is what we go about, and by doing all of these, we can actually create something called purpose performance index to quantify the purpose driven outcomes alongside the financial outcomes, whatever we may report on a quarterly basis, right? So the net outcome, what we may have is a enhanced organization resilience, and it will also, trust me, it will also reduce the burnout and short termism of the entire stakeholders, right?
A lot of information there. So now what we are talking is profit with purpose is the new growth formula, is what you are telling, right?
That's right. See, today, if you are looking at, globally, the kind of climate change related things happening, right?
Hmm.
Today, organization may be making a lot of profit, but, with the kind of changes happening in the environment and the way the resources are getting depleted, we will not have anything to even sell over a period of time because of the changes that are happening. So that is why it is important for any entity, right, to look at planet and people along with profit, and that's where
Hmm.
ikigai or purpose becomes a very good element to marriage. If I want to put it that way.
Got it, sir. Sir, how does responsible AI and technology governance support purposeful growth?
Okay. See here, if I look at responsible AI, right, there are a lot of positives. I don't want to talk only from a negative standpoint. It brings in a lot of positives where it helps in decision making faster, right?
Hmm.
And but we have to look at it with a caution, right? We need to look at it from what kind of how the AI and overall technology is serving the society, ethically, and then it brings in, right. I'll keep on to my the theme of the entire podcast, embodying the what we call in Indian context as seva, service as a
Hmm.
core value, from an Indian philosophy standpoint. That's what we will have to look at, right? Society, we have to bring it more ethically, right? And then for the benefit of all, right. There is something called UN Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them, right? And
Hmm.
in that, there are a couple of goals, where we will have to look at, right? It aligns. It has to align with the Sustainable Development Goals, ensuring that technology and AI initiative contribute directly to the global priorities, aligning to the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, couple of sustainable development goals we can bring in here are reducing the inequalities, right? While we may have a lot of tech development happening, will all these new technology be reaching all the underprivileged people, right? It has to have, will it, or are we going to help the technology to reach out to those people and address them, to bring them up, right? Fostering quality education, right? And here we have to really attribute the technology, how it served during COVID, right? Even most of the underprivileged, they were able to continue their education with just their mobile device, the way
Hmm.
the internet bandwidth and other things percolated down, right? So it was able to do that now, and we have to look at it from that, right. And then the other sustainable development goals we are looking at is supporting decent work culture and environment, and then build resilient infrastructure, right? So again, when we are staying on in the same from a overall empathy and ethical, as always, Europe always stands ahead when it comes to regulations, right? So the responsible AI, whatever is being brought in, should integrate well with human centric design, right? Like regulatory frameworks like UAA Act. And as we speak, even in India, we are likely to have certain regulations coming in, and globally, like how GDPR for privacy was the trendsetter across the globe for privacy regulations. As we speak, there are a lot of regulations coming from all
Hmm.
the countries, because AI is going to have major disruption, and we need to look at responsible and ethical use of AI. Again, staying with from an Indian context, right? And even in India, they have changed the good old naming conventions of all these acts, right? We are now calling it as
Hmm.
Nyaya, justice, balancing between innovation with fairness, echoing the SDG principles of leave no one behind, right? We should have technology so that it is not leaving any of the stakeholders or people behind, right? To sum it up, purposeful growth, right, should be aligned to the technology with social good, avoiding, what we saw in the movie Matrix, right? It is, dystopian futures, what we saw in the movie Matrix, right? So innovation is important, in current disruptive environment, but all the innovation should get aligned to the STG, right? All the algorithm processes, all of these should harmonize with the collective well-being of the universe, right? So that is what I would sum up this particular aspect.
Yeah, got it, sir. Sir, coming to AI and this one, when we speak about, can AI ethics be built on the Ikigai like principles, sir?
Right. So perfectly, it can pitch in, for the benefit of the audience, right? How many, if you are not aware of what is Ikigai, Ikigai has four broad circles. That's how it is built on, right? The four circles, if I were to call it, it's a passion, vocation, profession, and mission. These are all the four circles when it comes to Ikigai, right? So these can be mapped directly into the ethical AA pillars, whatever the organization or the overall, we are we are developing. So to map these four circles, we can say that, what tech loves, right? So that is one element we can look at. What tech is good at, right? What the world needs, and then whether it can sustain there, and it is paid for. No, these are all the way we can embed, the ethics, and then bring in the ikigai principles aligned to the four circles of ikigai, right? So designing the AI with ikigai promotes meaningful functionality rather than just looking at efficiency. Today, if you go back and look at any organization, we are building the AI systems to improve the efficiency, reduce the failure modes, right? All of these are absolutely fine, right? But it should also promote meaning driven functionality rather than just looking at efficiency or reducing the failure rate, right? Again, staying in the Indian context, the AI development should be aligning it with the overall societal value. Like how, a typical Bharatanatyam dancer, right, has to balance the form, the rhythm, and the emotion. You look at it, when we go and watch a Bharatanatyam recital, you will see the balance, right? And then it has to match the rhythm of, the song or whatever, we are bringing in. And then you can also see the eyes or the entire expressions to demonstrate the emotion. And a development should align with the societal values typical to a Bharatanatyam recital, right? So again, AA should respect the dignity and promotion of inclusivity. This again is a major area, and I have been talking about it repeatedly, right? Again, you should not be looking at only the people who have access to this getting better off, but we should also look at the underprivileged and others are also looking at. So to sum it up, the AKI principles prevents technology from becoming a tool of alienation or exploitation. That is what, all the AI developers should look at, and it should be an extension of human purpose and not a replacement. Today, the question everyone asks is AI going to replace
Replace.
human? No, it has to bring in the element of enhancing the purpose of humans rather than replacing them.
Got it, sir. That pointer of saying replacement, the fear still exists where people think they will be replaced, and most of the things. And recently, we were talking about an article where we found that even some of the complex decisions the robots were expecting for an input, because those inputs were not given to them to perform certain activity, because those complex algor instructions had approvals. which needs an human intervention. So
So
that's the point that I would like to bring it up to people who don't think they will be replaced with AI.
absolutely, so as we see, today, AI cannot replace human totality, but all of us have to understand what is AI, how to use AI effectively, right? So if as a user, if we are not able to make effective use of AI, probably you are likely to be replaced. Sorry for saying like that, but all of us
Yeah,
have to know how to use AI, and that is what is going to be a very important skill for anyone today.
true, sir. Because you should be aware that AI can help you as an assistant. That's the first pointer that you should look at. That's what I think. Sir, how do we balance innovation with intentions?
Beautiful. It's something that I have done one recent presentation in one of the corporates, and this is precisely the entire theme of that particular talk, right? So we have to start by asking why before how, right? So
Hmm.
to expand what I mentioned, right, you should align the innovation with authentic goals, right, where we are able to balance the intention in terms of what kind of stakeholders are going to be benefited. Are we going to have impact on society? Are we going to have an impact on on the planet, right? And again, when we talk about impact need not be always looked at it from a negative connotation at all, right?
Yeah,
Impact can be both positive
positive and negative.
and not so positive, right? So you have to look at both, and if the impact is going to have a positive impact, be it to the planet and to the society, we can continue the innovation, and that's where we need to focus on, right? Like how again, staying back in Mahabharata, Krishna is guiding Arjuna in Mahabharata. Intention
Right.
provides the ethical clarity to bold action, right? So that is where when Arjuna was not ready for the war, and that's where the Gita Charam, whatever we call, right? So that is giving the ethical clarity for bold action, right? So again, staying back, that's precisely what UAA Act encourages in terms of transparent innovation, respecting the privacy, ethical transparency of all the the organization towards the stakeholders, right? Bring in the element of impact score, right? Human impact score, right? You need not be a human impact score alone. It can be a planet impact score, along with all other traditional metrics to look at only from a financial or the overall risk from an organization standpoint. By doing so, we bring in the larger element of societal responsibility, right? So innovation without intention, right? It's like risks of repeating the cautionary tale of what we saw that in the Mahabharata, Ravana's hubris, whatever we saw, right? So the balancing
Yeah.
requires constant dialogue between the technologist, people who are coming from what we call it as ethicist, right? Or the trust people, and most importantly the users, right? So we need to have this dialogue, and it cannot just be we decide on innovation and go on, right? We need to involve all these stakeholders before we bring in that, right? So that is what I would sum it up on this particular innovation with intent. You're taking care of the larger societal aspects, bringing in all possible stakeholders is important.
Sir, I think what you're saying is when AI finds the purpose, innovation finds the direction, is what you're saying. Because purpose of AI is to solve certain problems, and from innovation we find a direction. How do we get those things happening, right? And that's where I think what you're
Absolutely,
saying.
absolutely. You have nailed it.
Sir, can purpose become the next layer of cybersecurity, sir?
I would say that purpose definitely yes, and it is a very important element. Again, I'm linking it with ESG elements, right? ESG, if we were to call it, right? Uh, we are talking about the cyber security or data security comes under both the S and the G pillar, right? And I'll expand it in a way, right? Uh, so large scale, breaches, especially when people are losing money, right? We are seeing a lot of retired people
Yeah.
losing money due to the data, their bank accounts being there, and we are looking at various people getting into digital arrest and other things, right? So when it comes to those things, purpose is important, right? When we are building in that, and that becomes an intrinsic sense of ownership and vigilance. That is what we will have to bring in, right? And all of these policies alone, right? Having extreme number of policies to address whatever the regulators are mandating, or the standards are mandating, it alone cannot be sufficient. We need to have some purpose towards it, and that's where the governance layer of ESG brings in over there, right? So it has to have a shared meaning, to bring in a culture of security among all the stakeholders, where every stakeholder believes in all others, individual, in terms of protecting all other stakeholders. And you cannot just make it only the bank has to be responsible or other stakeholders. As a citizen, we all should have basic our own hygiene, right? And that becomes a purpose for ourselves in Ikigai, right? I'm not going to share anything to people. I'm going to start, Indians by large, we go with trusting everybody, right? We need to get into a element of zero trust as a purpose, so that we don't share anything inadvertently, and that is precisely what is being misused by the hackers and other elements, right? So by doing all of these, it becomes a reactive shield. What we are going to protect, into a protective mindset, where everyone, right, be it be it the society or the individuals and all the stakeholders, everybody will come into a proactive mindset element here, right? So again, staying with the Indian cultural aspects, it's a karma yoga, right? Cyber security becomes about ethical action, not just an element of creating hundreds of risks, and then demonstrating that we have a risk mitigation strategy. It's not going to help, right? Your risk register is not going to be the last this thing, right? It has to be
Mm.
demonstrated in the karma of every individual who are in stake, right? So that is what I would briefly sum up this particular here. So the purpose helps in cyber security, where we can have embedded in the training, and then it can move from a compliance driven approach to a commitment driven approach to everyone, right? That is what I would summarize this particular aspect.
So there is always saying that human is the weakest chain in the system, right? Now, how does the integrity reduce the insider threats, sir? Because it's always human being the weakest link, right?
Right. So integrity, if I were to put it in a way, it builds the belonging of the individual, right? So people protect what they identify with them emotionally, right? So that's
Hmm.
how we will have to resonate, right? When we are imparting training, when we are putting together, controls or whatever we may want to, talk about, we have to bring in the element of belonging, right? So that each individual, right, you can't have one generic framework to go and talk with everybody, right? We need to address, according to the stakeholder, so that they are able to identify with something which resonates to them very dearly. So that's how we will have to, so that you look at it from the addressing the emotional layer of the individual, right? So the moment we bring in those kind of an element, right, the insider threat typically starts diminishing, where employees start seeing themselves as guardians and not as
Hmm.
liabilities, right? So that is what we need to have, and all of these can be done when we start. We need to balance between penalizing and recognizing, right? So we need to bring in that kind of ownership imparted on them, so that they take the complete accountability, and rules are not going to help, right? I learned
Hmm.
driving when I was in US, right? Even at 2 a.m. when we drive, when no other car is around and nobody is watching, people stop, right? So that is the culture we will have to bring in, so that the insider threats and integrity is brought in, right? So people start focusing there, and then we the residual aspect of it is, it brings in the culture, and it promotes a lot of transparency and open communication, right? That's how we will have to look at here. And the moment we bring in all of these and bring in the transparency and the listening attitude, the all the stakeholders will start reporting, right? The abnormalities or whatever. Otherwise, we are they may not be encouraged to come and report any lapses happening around the system, right? That is what, and this is where the leadership will also have to demonstrate in terms of the ethical leadership element has to be brought in, and the leaders have to demonstrate and walk the talk here. Instead of penalizing people, they have to respect and acknowledge, right? If people are transparently reporting issues.
Sir, can ethical awareness protect data better than policy alone?
Yes, as continuing with what I had talked about in the previous question, right? It is, we are moving away from rules, right? We are moving away from rules. We are, where we demonstrate more in terms of values, right? And the shared values will always resonate, and help in the awareness levels, right? Making the overall protection as a personal priority. Okay, so that is how you have to look at it. Training, that evokes empathy, right? Connects with the overall cyber hygiene, with and also brings in the element of caring. When we talk about caring, it is not just about their own data. The caring will bring in the element of their own peers, their customers, and the overall society at large. When we bring in this empathy, right, people will start thinking, while at that point in time, I'm if I'm selfish on protecting my own data, not, not all is going to be the same, and someone else will be leaking something associated with my own personal data, right, or any other data. That is where we have to bring in the culture, and that is where we bring in the value system, so that we start respecting each other, right? And that's where we bring in the element of emotional engagement, right? And wherein we can increase the overall aspect of retention, in terms of having a secure behavior, instead of just having numerous number of policies to be documented and memorized. No, it is not going to be of any help.
Sir, how does the servant leadership help sustain purpose during crisis? Because we've been talking more or hearing more about the servant leadership part. So,
Right.
how do you look at it?
Okay. See, this is something extremely close to my heart. Especially, we are linking servant leadership with crisis, right? And crisis is when we any leader has to demonstrate the complete gamut of servant leadership, right? So when we are looking at servant leadership, it is very closely associated with empathy, not sympathy, right?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of difference between sympathizing and empathizing,
Sympathy and empathy.
right?
Yeah.
So we need to put people before the process in times of adversity, right? You can't sorry for saying like this, you can't delay things by following the organization level bureaucratic processes, when it comes to crisis, because it's like when an accident happens, right? We have seen that numerously, right? What we call it as the golden hour, right? The golden hour, from a medical standpoint is is the it's between life and death, right? And that's precisely when we are handling with people, right? You can't wait for the processes to get completed, if it is going to positively impact the people. And that's what a servant leader will have to look at, right? You look at it from an empathizing element there, right? When we do that, it brings in a psychological safety, for the people, right? And then it also helps in collective problem solving, right? So when we do this, everybody will start working towards it. And I'm again, I've done one session around it, and there is a excellent book. I'm going way back, right? For all our listeners, go back and read a book called in it, right? It's a book around the Boston Marathon bombing element, right? Within a span of a specific number of days, all those people who were injured were all brought back to life, right? And the people who were responsible, they were also caught immediately, right? And that's where the overall element of servant leadership across, if you look at the mayor of Boston, he was there in front. All the doctors in the the entire ecosystem of Boston, they were there. So by doing all of these, the psychological safety was ensured. And the most important element is collective problem solving, right? Here, we can see that in many of the animals, especially the birds, what we call it as swarm leadership, right? So it is a collective. They think, you will always go and address the problem as a swarm, where everybody will be there and nobody will be waiting for a direction, right? Once everybody will go in a swarm sort of an arrangement, right? And no, and they will not wait for anyone to go and direct them. So that is what, by doing all of these, it's a collective problem solving, right? And most important here, for a servant leader is you have to use your ears more than your mouth, right? So listening is an important triad here, where we need to listen, and we need to also look at the body language and other things. A lot of messages comes around. That is how the critical emotional habits, we are able to demonstrate, cultivating overall resilience of all, right? Here again, that's what I would put it here, in terms of servant leadership, empathy, and then again, listening, and then non-judgmental. These are all the elements that we will have to bring in when we are talking about servant leadership, and accountability, right? You may have to take very very swift decisions, and we need to take complete accountability of whatever we take at that point in time.
You've been talking about seven. Now, what emotional habits make resilient leader thrive to uncertainties?
Right. So some of them I've already talked about. Right.
Hmm.
One element, again, staying in the Indian, and this is something being practiced globally. Even NLP talks about all of these. Right. We have to get into an element of mindful breathing, right, and always
Hmm.
be grounded. You have to be present at that moment, right? And that's where grounding helps a lot, right? uh, as much as possible, start journaling, right? We really don't know at what point in time these kind of journals or reflections, whatever we see, are going to help, right? And every crisis, right? I have handled so many crises, and some of them are same, right? Every year, northeast monsoon happens and Chennai, but it was not the same. What we had in 2015 was different. What we had in 2016 when Varda cyclone came was different, right? So each crisis brings in a new element, and it is a new one, right? And compassion, meditation is an important element. Listening, I have already talked about, right? And then and then non-judgmental accountability, right? Other important element which I have not talked about it is have a sense of gratitude, right? There and most gratitude along with element of positivity, right? During crisis, especially, when lot of negativities are there around, your positiveness be there. It's like, even if you have it's like a test match, or a one day or a T20, right? Go back 2 years back, so we had to defend only 36 runs with 6 overs, yet India won, right? That positivity of when we had our bowlers and fielding, helped us stay there. So that is what we need to have. That motivation to be there should always be there. And then we all consider vulnerability as a weakness, during
Yeah.
crises, or a servant leader. Sometimes vulnerability can also be a strength, and it need not be always a weakness, right?
Thank
and
you for that, sir. I think, yeah, yeah, good.
and lastly, don't wait for the big wins. Start celebrating the smaller wins.
I think what you're saying is celebrate what is there from start. Small wins always make
That's right.
you to look forward for big wins, right? So that's what you're saying. How do we see the leaders rebuild trust after an ethical failure, sir? Because leaders are questioned when there is a failure, right? So how do we look at this point, sir?
Right. So, here, may not be directly relevant. I'm just,
Hmm.
there is a quote by one famous, Max de Prey's quote, right?
Hmm.
I'm just quote to quote and unquote. The first responsibility of a leader is to define the reality, right? So when we talk about the reality, it is also accepting the mistakes, and whatever it is, right? The last
Hmm.
thing a leader, a leader has to do is thank you, right? So in between, right? The start where we start talking about reality and the thank you. The leader must become a servant and a debtor, right? So this
Hmm.
sums up the progress of a artful leader, right? So that is what, right? Acknowledge stock, reality, be transparent communication with all stakeholders, right? Take meaningful corrective actions. We need not have an ego of not accepting our mistakes, right? And then accept the progress publicly. And we have seen some of the tallest leaders who have come and openly accepted, right? There is no harm in accepting, right? All of us learn from all of these, right? So
Mistakes.
so that is what we will have to look at. Again, going back to the Raja Harishchandra's thing, demonstrate humility and echoing the humility, like how Raja Harishchandra always does, right? uh, and if need be, right, have a external review done, in terms of someone comes and do a complete audit or an assessment of whatever has happened, right, to demonstrate the overall accountability, right? And then, by doing all of these, we bring in, over a period of time, you build a reputation, right? And then even those failures may not be taken so seriously, because we have been very clear and transparent, right? So embedding these kind of ethical values into the culture and policies are not going to demonstrate these, right? The culture only will demonstrate these.
Got it, sir. What you are saying is resilience is the rhythm of purpose, is what you are trying to
Absolutely.
say in all as pointers that you are trying to mention to us. Now, sir, we coming to the next pointer. Give me a second, sir. Uh, we always speak about strategies, sir. Normally, how can strategies stay soilful while driving the ROI?
Okay.
Because the end of the day, it is ROI which matters, right?
Right. Again, I'll repeat some of the points that we have been talking about. Right. A strategy with the soul, integrates the overall profit motives with human values. Right. So that it demonstrate holistic success. Going back,
Hmm.
the Maniratnam's movie Guru, where
Hmm.
the character, if you can look at the ambition of the character there is balanced with the social consequence, conscience, and it also generates a lasting impact, right? So that's how we will have to look at bring in the element of balanced purpose scorecard, right? So when we go back and look at balance scorecard, right, we put it always in four quadrants, right? So
Hmm.
in that, you can bring in the element where while we talk about financial outcomes, we can also bring in the element of social and emotional KPIs, right? So in this way, unlike a typical balance scorecard, where we bring in the financial, customer, learning and development, we bring in something called, this is something that for the sake of this thing, you may not be able to see somewhere something called balance purpose scorecard, but for the discussion sake, I have brought in here, right? You marry the financial outcomes and develop our own, the four quadrants of a balance scorecard, where you add the element of emotional and social and emotional indicators along with your financial outcomes, right? So in that way, when we bring in, we get into an element of a meaningful return of investment, where it measures typical intangible returns like employee engagement, brand loyalty, so on and so forth, right? These are all the things that we can bring in, right? Again, pointers that I have talked about, empathy in leadership builds in the element and motivates teams by having increased frequency. So to sum it up, and go back, a couple of years back, India did have, all across India, we have seen that, a soulful strategy embrace the overall Indian wisdom of Vasudeva Kudumbakam, where the
Yes.
world is one family, right? The moment we start looking at here, you bring in the element of soulfulness into the return of investment, like that's how I would sum up soulfulness with the strategy.
Great pointers there, sir. Now, is it possible to lead with empathy and edge?
Definitely yes, right? And we have seen that, some of the leaders, and we have seen that I'll give one example. I don't know if it may be relevant or not. uh, you know,
Hmm.
Singapore, for example, converts, it recycles water, right? And it recycles
Hmm.
water from any possible
See.
sources, including whatever comes out of your home consumptions, and they make it into a drinkable element, right? So again, it may not directly look into the empathy and edge, but that's how you demonstrate people. To promote this, the prime minister started the campaign by having by drinking that particular water, and and then people started to embrace that, right? So this is how empathy and bringing in the edge enhances decisiveness by deepening the understanding of stakeholder needs, right? So by demonstrating this, right, it removed the fear from the people, and they were able to take it from there, right? And it also brings in the element of it prevents blind ambition, that can harm the overall culture. And we have seen the good and positive sides of not many leaders here, right? The edge sharpens actions, right? The edge, we have seen that repeatedly, the Singapore prime minister, and repeatedly we have seen in many prime ministers,
Yeah.
in that region, right? And they bring in the empathy and ensure, and it is well aimed, right? So these kind of leaders, who are the balanced leaders, inspire loyalty without losing the focus on the results, whatever, right? So empathy does not weaken; it only roots the leaders into authenticity in whatever they are demonstrating, right? Again, staying with this, and this is something almost every listener today will resonate with this. It resonates with the Mahendra Singh Dhoni's calm yet competitive cricket captaincy, and nobody can deny that. We have never seen a stress in the difficult times, be it while chasing or be it while defending a total.
Sir, I think you are saying you should be calm to see things happen, because there is certain element of calmness that is required to face anything, is
That's
what you're
right.
saying, right? Okay. Sir, what frameworks align business KPIs with the purpose of metrics, sir?
Right. While I have talked about balanced purpose scorecard, but Kaplan's balanced scorecard framework is a time and tested model, and
Hmm.
use that and bring in the element of social and environmental KPIs, right? So that's what I have talked about, and staying in sustainability. We can align with the overall frameworks like GRI or SASB. Bring in the foundation, or the Indian companies, right? It need not be the top 500 listed companies alone to follow the business responsibility and sustainability reporting. You can take that, even the Indian framework, where you can use BRSR, though you may not be mandated. We can use these kind of frameworks to provide a foundation. And there is one more element. Again, there is something called B Corp, like how in
Hmm.
environment we have leads certification for the energy consumption. There is something called B Corp certification, aligning to the triple bottom line. Triple bottom line in ESG is all about people, planet, and profit, right? So the B Corp certifications are aligned to the triple bottom line approach, where it aligns with the purpose and with the profit, right? And then we can bring in the element of purpose audits, right, into board reviews, and by driving some element of accountability, right? And lastly, I would, last couple of pointers I would want to call it is bring in an element of storytelling, right? Have storytelling metrics, wherein we can talk about testimonials coming from employees, testimonials coming from customers, testimonials coming from the societal aspect of it, right? Which can bring in the qualitative depth along with the quantitative element of metrics. And lastly, right, and this is something, for personally, I use this a lot, right? Bring in the element of Kautilya's Arthashastra, right?
Hmm.
The entire Arthashastra is driven and documented from a ethical philosophy of what the king has to do there. While we are talking about ESG regulations, ESG norms coming from the West, but when you go and read Arthashastra, you will see the entire gamut of ESG in a way coming out in every chapter and every book of Arthashastra.
Thank you for that, sir. I think what you are saying is soulful strategy scales to scaling smarter is what you are saying. And with that, I would like to summarize or the key pointers that we have taken for this session. I would like to take it up. We spoke about what are the key. See, the clarity is what you have to look at. It is what it gives you to take when you are very clear, right? ESG without Ikigai is compliance without conviction is what I will say. The next point that I would like to summarize is purpose transforms sustainability from report to reality, because we've been seeing lot of reports, but there is no reality when it comes to those
It's only a
reports.
gloss.
Yeah. Now, then we said responsible AI is the concise of digital transformation rather than just saying digital transformation. But when we concisely look at, there is no value to it, right? That's what we looked at. Trust is the new competitive edge, is what we wanted to look at, and meaning drives momentum, right? If you have something which means something, then it's a value for us, and that drives momentum, right? And those are the few takeaway points that I wanted to mention. Sir, any last words that you want to put across before we close the session, sir?
Nothing much, as we conclude, right? I just want to put my closing thoughts. ESG frameworks, right? I have in a way summarized, right? ESG frameworks
Yeah.
define how organizations act. Ikigai defines why leaders act, right? So when purpose aligns with performance, growth is no longer accidental, right? It is inevitable. Just as in the
Hmm.
song Choti Si Asha, right? With,
Okay.
our A.R. Rahman's the first song, if I were to call it, right? I'm using Hindi
Yeah.
song here. Even the smallest hope, right? In Tamil, it is
Oh.
Chinna Chinna Asai, right? Even the smallest hope can light the darkest path. So, to can purpose illuminate business success, leadership that balances ethics, empathy, and economics will shape a world where innovation serves humanity with consciousness and courage. If this conversation is inspired you all, share that please do share your feedback. That's what I would sum it up.
Thank you for that, sir. And with this, we would like to thank the audience for joining us today. And we would like to conclude the session. Our next episode is coming up tomorrow, which we are talking about. I brought it under the scroll, and tomorrow we are having an episode at 6:30. Why every brand needs a leader who thinks like a strategist, because strategy means a lot when you look at business. So we are talking about this topic tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. IST. Looking forward to see you again. We've streamed this session live onto YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Do follow us and let us know how we can improve the session. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you.